Hey there, hi there, ho there, peeps. It's been a long time since I've made a video, but I came home today and something happened, and I just had to come in and make this video. I do not own the rights to anything that's going on, any of the music that's going on in the background. So, I'm going to start with telling you a short story about my life, and the names of certain people are going to be changed. I guess for protection, I always talked about writing a story about my life, and I never really knew where to get started, but I want to talk about a locked memory that I had. And I want to talk about and thank God for the children that I've raised and how they've grown up. And just, sometimes when you think that you're not enough, and you think that you're not good enough, and you think that what you're doing really doesn't count and it really doesn't matter, it's sometimes the little things that there are these little things that happen, and they let you know, and they put you back in check, and they let you know, damn, I gotta pat myself on the back that I actually did do something right. And so, disclaimer, I don't script what I say. I have a few notes here, and so if you are a person who possibly may have a hard time listening for a while, just to let you know, it may take a little time for me to get to my point. I am going to try to get to my point as soon as possible, but this is me freely talking. So the other day I had a memory unlocked. And I talked before about a little bit about my upbringing, and I talked about the fact that I was raised by a single mother, and I'll say a single mother because she wasn't married, and I will say singly my mother because my father and my mother weren't together. I might share that story another time. But anyway, excluding a few people from this story right now, because I want to touch on something specific, I'll say that I was predominantly raised by my mother. And I remember growing up and kind of staying between my house where we lived, or my apartment where we lived, and with my grandmother, who was actually my great-grandmother, because I never met my grandmother because she, had passed away before I was born. But I remember as a kid, my mother, used to tell me how dumb I was, how stupid I was, and my grandmother, my great-grandmother, I'm smiling, but I'm trying to keep myself from re-feeling what I felt then as a kid. As crazy as that may sound to some of you, sometimes when you rehash memories, the same feelings arise, and so that's why I'm smiling. And I remember being called stupid and all these hurtful comments that my mom and my grandmother made. I'm never going to amount to anything. My brother's going to run circles around my head. Blah, 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 blah. And so without really recognizing it and realizing it, I kind of started to believe that, which is not a me thing. I'm learning that it's an everybody thing. Sometimes the words that you think that don't affect people, they kind of sink in, and they do. And so I spent a lot of my childhood, from the time that I was with my mother, trying to prove myself and trying to be just like her. My mother was an excellent singer, in my opinion, and in the opinion of some other people. And I remember I had an uncle who it turns out that he was my great uncle, who was, in the industry, and he knew a lot of famous people, and he had a lot of connections at the time, and he was trying to help my mother before I was born to become a singer. And after I was born, she had back then they had like 45 discs, records, and she had recorded her voice on some of them, and I kind of felt like my mom was a celebrity. Anyhow, I had a brother, we'll call him Ronnie, right? Let me write that down so I remember not to use anyone's real name. And my brother Ronnie is a few years younger than I, and his father was around. So his father was my stepfather, and I felt a little awkward. There were a lot of things that happened, which happen sometimes when kids have different fathers, where the kid that's not the biological child of that father feels a little awkward. Couldn't pinpoint it then, but I did. So that's a little bit of the background. All right. And so Ronnie and I wound up going into the foster care system. We wound up becoming wards of the state. And so I still had this, now I'm feeling even more worthless than ever. It's starting to sink in that, my mother doesn't want me, my father doesn't want me, nobody wants me, I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm not worth anything. And so it left me with a lot of self-doubt, and I really didn't know what I was good for, or I really couldn't pinpoint any one thing that I was really good at. I didn't know that I was a gifted kid at that time. As you can see, my background, I teach now, and so learning a lot of things, I realized that I wasn't actually a gifted kid. Didn't know that. Nobody fostered that in me. But fast forward to the foster care system and the last family that we wound up staying with and aging out with. I won't go into too much details about that family, but I'll just say that I started going to church in that family. I had gone before, but I started to become active in the church. Sorry about that. Active in the church, and I started to sing on a choir. And I wanted to sing more than anything, but of course, I didn't have that thing in me that said that I was good at singing, And I'll never forget my first vocal coach. We'll call him Gnarls. Write that down so I don't change his name. And Gnarls saw and heard something in me and encouraged me. I'm going to not make this part of the story too long. Encouraged me and helped me to feel like there was something that I was good at. And I fought Gnarls tooth and nail. And finally I got to the point where, I was singing solos and, people were commenting. And I realized that with some training, I could do this well. And I actually did have the foundation to be a good singer. And so I joined that choir, and the choir became a tight-knit thing. There were quite a few teenagers on that choir. We sounded really good. And then a contest came about. And Gnarls said that he wanted the group to be renamed because we had a new sound. He had directed the kids there at the time at the church and the choir to become this choir that had this solid sound. And we were kind of just called the junior choir, and Gnarls wanted us to be named something else. So we had a contest. What are we going to be called? What are we going to be called? And even though I still had a lot of self-doubt, Gnarls really sparked something in me, and that made me feel like I can do something. And I entered the contest, and I won the contest. I won the contest, and I called the choir the Good News Ensemble. And Gnarls loved the name, and that's what the choir became. And there was an award, there was a reward for that name, and I won it. I had developed such a great love for music at that time, partially because I still wanted to hang on to my mother, like what kid doesn't, knowing that she can sing, and really starting to understand and recognize that I had this talent. And I won a keyboard. It was my first keyboard. I remember the name specifically. It was in the 80s. I was probably like a preteen to teen, like early teen at the time. And it was called a Casio Sampling SK1 keyboard. And it was everything to me. It meant the world to me. I went at that keyboard and tried my hand at producing, and I was already writing music, like writing songs, and tried my hand at producing my own songs. I was loving it. Oh my God, this keyboard meant everything to me. And I don't even remember how long I had it And I even repressed this memory because it was so traumatic to me. What happened next? What happened next was, well, a little bit of backstory. My uncles, let's see what I'm going to call them. I did write that down, what I was going to call them. My uncle Lenny and Ernest came to live with me in the foster home that I was in. And I'm going to tell you how that happened. That happened because we wound up being with the family of my brother's father. And there was a lot happening there too, where I didn't fit in because I wasn't blood related. But the one thing that I had was music. The one thing that I had that made me feel good about myself, after being rejected by my biological father, even after being rejected by my biological mother, even after being rejected by my biological great grandmother, even after being rejected by my biological great uncle, even after all the rejection that I felt, and the really feeling like there was nothing that I was good for, nobody wanted me, there was nothing that I was good at, it was the music. And even though at the time I might have been considered a little bit tone deaf, I was learning, and I was witnessing growth. And this keyboard was something that I won fair and square. I came up with a name for this choir. It was the thing. Like, everybody in the church started to call us choir the name that I chose. And I had this keyboard, and this keyboard was my prized possession. This memory was repressed for me for many years, meaning I didn't remember it at all. Fast forward to when I had my first daughter. She was 2 years old, and I bought a keyboard. It's actually, I think it has 64 keys, and I had that keyboard from the time she was 2 until the time she was 18, and I still have it. And for most of the time that I owned this keyboard, I kept it in a box. Because I had other bills to pay and things to do, I always said I would get around to buying myself a stand for the keyboard. I would always get around to buying myself a bag or a cover for the keyboard. And I didn't wind up getting a stand until like maybe 3 years ago. Still never got the bag. And so after the box went through hell, the keyboard moved around with me from place to place as I moved over the years. And I never really played this keyboard. To me, the keyboard was a subconscious replacement of that Casio keyboard. And I think I skipped over what happened, so let's go back a little bit. So my uncles Lenny and Ernest lived with me because my biological family were friends with my brother's father's family, and things happened, and the house that we were in was like a house of refuge, so to speak. And so my uncles that were my biological uncles wound up living within the household with us. And so there's a lot of stuff happening, but without getting too deep into that, came home one day and my Casio keyboard, my Casio sampling SK1 keyboard had been stolen. I was devastated. I think I left that out before I said I replaced it, without realizing that that's what I was doing. So even though I never really played this keyboard, I have been so protective over it to the point where my youngest daughter plays the piano now. And sometimes she wants to play my piano. And I go into a fit up until a few days ago. And I would say, it's mine, put it back where, you know how kids are, they don't put nothing back where it belongs, they don't put nothing back right. Sometimes she has it on her bed, she'll have it for days. I want it on the stand, I want it covered in plastic. I don't have the case, I want it covered in plastic. And she uses it and just abuses it, and I'm always fighting. It's mine, I want it where it is. And my kids, they don't understand, but you don't even play it. So my oldest daughter comes to me and she says not so long ago, I'm trying to understand, and I'm saying to all my friends, my mother is a musician and she plays the piano. And granted, I did learn how to play the piano, and I do know how to play the piano, but you know, I'm way out of practice. And so in order for me to play anything, I would have to go back and reteach myself. She says, I've never ever seen you play the piano. Just play something for me. So I'm like, I don't have any sheet music. I don't play off the top of my head. And so it became a whole conversation. So both girls like bombarded me, because basically they were trying to get me to give the keyboard to my youngest daughter. And the memory unlocked, and I said, let me tell you guys the significance of this keyboard to me. And as I told my story, the tears welled up in my eyes. And you ever cry and you get like a little lump in your throat, and you try to choke it back, and and I was so embarrassed. I was literally crying, telling them this story. I'm not even sure if I cried about it when it happened, because I was so used to, drugs are a hell of a thing. And when people are on drugs, alcohol, when people abuse drugs and alcohol, as many of you already know, while they're under the influence, they are different people. And I was so used to not being able to have anything. And I say that because I had a lot of stuff stolen by family members and by people that were not exactly blood related, but family. And so between the three of those people, Lenny, Ernest, and Blaine, my keyboard got stolen and sold. And it was a repressed memory. And then I bought a keyboard to replace it years later and didn't realize it. And so as I cried and wept to my daughters the other day, not recognizing that I really never mourned for my Casio sampling SK1 keyboard, I said to myself, Self, are you remembering this story accurately? Why do you remember the specific name and brand of the keyboard? And so I started to think that maybe I was adding to the memory, and maybe I started to doubt myself. Maybe that's not true. And so it bothered me that it still bothered me. I'm winding down. The story is almost over, guys. I'm doing good keeping myself on track for the most part, because I can go way off on a tangent. So I said, we have Google at the tip of at our fingertips now. Let me Google and see if this was even such a thing. Why do I remember this name so accurately? And so I Googled it. Casio sampling SK1 keyboard, and it came up. And I looked at it, and it was it. So this thing hurt me so badly for decades. So much so that when that memory unlocked, I remembered the specific make and model of the keyboard. And I was just sharing information with my kids. So I went back and I said, look, I was accurate. This is it. This is what it looked like. And I was so excited to even be able to see it again. Because I'm telling you, this was in the late 80s that this happened. So like maybe between 87 and 89, maybe between 86 and 89. And I was showing them, I was so excited. And they were selling them for $200. I said, now that I'm looking at it and looking at the one that I had that I bought, I said it was so tiny. And I'm like, wow, I'm not going to pay $200 for that, you know. And then I thought maybe I'll pay $200 just to have it. And then I saw they had one on eBay where that was like, $100. And, I guess they had other websites, but I was like done. Like, it was just, wow, not lethargic. What is the word that I'm looking for? Anyway, the word that I'm looking for is, it means that it was nice. It felt good for me to release that pain, crying. And my kids were hugging me. I was embarrassed, like, damn, they're hugging me. I don't want to be crying like this. Bawling, people, bawling, literal eye water, bawling, like, that kind of crying. So fast forward to today, I'm going to my cousin Lena's house and going over there to spend some time. And I'm asking my daughter, my oldest, come downstairs because we're going together. She's like, come upstairs, you gotta come upstairs, I got you something, you gotta come upstairs, you gotta see this, you gotta come upstairs. And I'm like, come on, if I go upstairs, I'm not gonna come back down, I'm tired, let's go, blah, 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 because I just got back in from hanging out with my friend Barbara. I'm literally writing names down on my hand, people. And if I tell another story tomorrow, the names will probably change because I'm literally writing them on my hand in ink. And once I wash my hands, it's done. But anyway, I'm wrapping it up. I didn't come upstairs. So we go and we spend time with Lena. And it's hella late now. And I'm sitting here making this video. And right now it is actually 12:39 a.m. So my daughter's like, don't go in your room. I want to film. I told Kathy that I was going to, that's my youngest daughter's name. I'm going to call her Kathy right now. I told Kathy that I was going to film your reaction. Like, what the hell? What's going on, right? So I'm like, come on, man. I want to spray myself down. I want to take these clothes off. So I'm like, all right. She's like, okay, let me film. And he takes out her phone and she's filming. So like I open up my door and I'm looking around and I'm like, I don't see nothing wrong. Like, what's going on? And I noticed on my bed that it's plugged in. God, yo, my kids are the best. This is it, people. Casio sampling SK1 keyboard. I don't know where she got it from, and I promise you this was about maybe 2 or 3 days ago that I told them this story. I don't know if you can hear that. I don't have the instructions, so I don't remember how it samples, but I do remember that it records, because I know I used to record. I am going to figure this out. I'm going to mess around. I'm going to play with it. I'm going to cherish this keyboard. It's mine, and this one is not going anywhere. So I had to share that story with you guys because I'm just freaking elated. And that is my story time for today. Thank you guys for listening to me. I plan on doing more videos like this in the future. So, yeah. Like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'm not going to go into the moral because, and I'm not going to go over the points that should stand out to you. Whatever stands out to you, stands out to you. All of my stories, I think, have some type of motivation, some type of, or some point of motivation. So if you are inspired at all by my story, and I'll tell you, sometimes with my kids, I doubted myself as a single parent. And saying that I was a single parent all their lives is not to take shots at anyone else. It's just saying that, you know, a lot of the raising my kids on my own for all these years, meaning that they lived with me, and I took them to all their doctor's appointments. You know, I'm not going to go into that. I'm not taking shots at the dads. One, rest in peace. Not taking any shots there or anywhere else. I'm just telling my truth. Sometimes you think when you are in these situations that you're not doing enough, and you're thinking that you're not good enough. Parenting does not come with any instructions. It's different for every kid. Every kid is different. Every situation is different. But hang in there, because my kids are awesome. And anyway, whatever encouragement this is for anyone, so be it. I am rambling now, and it looks like my battery is going to die, so I'm going to go. But I just needed to share that story. I just have it documented, and